Okay, welcome back, everybody. It's been a few weeks since we've been together. As best I understand it, we meet tonight, and then we meet a week from tonight, and then I think the week after that is Play Week, as best I understand it. And Play Week, school is in session, but there is no classes. What's that mean? It's that our curriculum includes you doing whatever you can to help the play, which is the biggest outreach that this church has in the course of a year, just with probably over 1,000 people. It's well over 1,000 people, isn't it, that come here? So that's, everybody understand that, and I hope that's consistent with what you're hearing from the Bible College administration. So here we go. Also, I just picked up another load of exams. I picked up some last week. I know there were a couple people that we made special arrangements for, but my goal is to get those corrected this week. I'm not sure I'm going to make that goal, but hopefully get those corrected and get them back to you. And again, if those exams indicate that you're in some sort of trouble, hopefully you'll have time to correct things and pull it out of the fire with the final exam. So we have been talking about team life. Is that the right word? Team life, but more like in an organizational context and with sort of organizational language. And the purpose of the team leader is really to create an environment where the body can exercise its gifts and people can be a success in what they're called to do, and by putting around that person the things he needs so he can be successful. And we've sort of done that maybe like from a top-down way, like how the team leader is communicating, coming together in team meetings, and how those team meetings can be conducted, and really what we're trying to accomplish. But of course you know all that because you've studied and done well on the exam. My only problem with this, push it in to get it, oh, very clever. Who said that? All right. That's extra credit for Shahan because he knew the answer there. So I've got the stylus in my hand now. Now we're going to sort of like dive in on a lower level here and talk about specific things. And if you wanted to give a title to what we're going to talk about now, this would be 7 questions that every team member needs to be able to answer, okay? Now, of course, you as the team leader are sort of responsible to make sure that your team members can answer these questions. Maybe they don't even know that they're questions that they should be able to answer, but you could kind of test yourself by testing your team members to see if they know what's going on. So here we go. And again, at the end of this, I want you to know what these 7 things are. But as always, I've kind of, just to disclaim a little bit, the way I taught this course a few years ago, like almost all the things I talk about, there's just a series of points that go along with them. But I've tried not to I just don't want to hand out a checklist, because then you'll memorize the checklist and you'll be able to parrot back specific things. But I want you to understand it. I don't want you just to be able to give the answer, but I want you to be able to understand what it's about. So I'm doing it kind of this way, so that not to make it frustrating, but to make it, hopefully to make you think and to enter into the meditation of it, not just the memorization of it. But we are going to write down these items as we go along here. So, and also, like in terms of us just maturing and how we're able to think, I would guess that if we were to put you in a room, either alone or small groups, and say, what are 7 things that everybody needs to know when they're working in an organization? My guess is that you would come up with most of these things. And I think you might not come up with them if you made it too complicated. But if you just made it real simple, what are the simple things that I need to know when I'm working somewhere? You would come up with these things. So here we go. And okay, what's the first thing I need to know? Well, let me just put it out to you folks. What's the first thing I would need to know when I'm working somewhere? Yes, sir.
What I'm doing.
There you go. See how easy this is? What is my job? Okay? What is my job? But the way we've communicated it a couple times in this class is that lots of times where things break down is really at the fundamentals. There's very simple things that we don't get right. So you have people working somewhere, but they don't really know what their job is. You know, they're thrown into a situation, given a title, or just given a place or a desk. Here, you're going to work with this person. Well, what is my job? Well, and people sort of fall into it. But like, what is my job? The first thing. Now, in that what is my job thought, there's something that we've all heard of called the job description. Okay? And that is simply a written account of what the individual's job is. Now, I am for job descriptions, and I am against job descriptions. Okay, and it just all depends how you think about them. I am for them because they are very, they can be very, very useful in defining, like on a foundational level, what the person is doing. And as believers, we learn to think according to the Bible, according to the Word of God. What is truth? We quote the chapter and verse, and those things are like foundational. I'm sorry, my leg's sort of hitting that, which is maybe causing the flickering up there. We sort of plant our lives on the Word of God. And I just remember as a teenager, am I really saved? And what kept my sanity was what the Bible said about it. These certain verses. And really, for us, anybody in an organization, your job description or your job title, or job description, maybe as written down, can really save you. Like, what is it that I have been hired to do? And in that sense, it's very, very helpful. If it's written down, it can set up a very good dialogue between me and my supervisor. This is my job description. Are we all agreed on it? Yes, we are. This is it, this is it, this is it. So that can be extremely helpful, even with my co-workers. This is my job. Now, in that sense, I'm for them. I am, when properly executed, I should say, I am for them. I'm against them in probably two senses that come immediately to mind. The first sense in which I would be against them is when I start to, maybe because of insecurity or because I don't want to grow or be challenged, I start to use my job description like as a defense to keep me from doing other things that could be helpful. And we have a number of people in this room, I have 2 or 3 at least, that actually work for Greater Grace World Outreach. The way we write our offer letters, and I'm not saying this is the best or the only way to do it, but the way we write our offer letters is we write them as saying, your job duties will be as assigned by your department head, who is so-and-so, And the reason we write them that way is because, and this isn't true in all cases, in many departments it's not this way, but the way I think about Greater Grace World Outreach is that God has given us really the Great Commission, which is to go into all the world with the gospel. And we got the Board of Elders, we got Pastor Schaller, who really is the leader of the ministry. And he's hearing from God. And he's hearing from God in the sense that God is leading him and guiding him with where he wants to take all of us as a church through the teaching, but also through specific ways that we're going to reach out and that we're going to grow and expand. And so the definition and the direction can come from the top, but the definition and direction can also come from the body, also can come from the organization, can come from people within the organization. we really talked a lot about that. So this should not be a new concept. But I don't want to give Wesley a job description. I do in the sense I talked about, but I don't want to give him a job description in the sense that that keeps him from growing as an individual, so that if God has given him some thought about some way that he can help, hey, I have an idea. And I have the energy to start doing this, or to organize this, or take this ball and run with it. I want him to be able to be free to do that. So that's how I view it, is that there's leadership from the top, but there's also just the life of the body, and the organization is free. And because people who work, paid or not, people who work in the organization, they are not slaves, they are really co-laborers. We really want to have a sense of, like, some of these buzzwords we use as buy-in, where I'm participating in this, and we want to have that thought process stimulated at all times. So all the reason I'm talking about that is to say, I don't want a job description to be to psychologically or mentally hit someone as something that's going to tie his hands. So the job description, if it is what I would call dynamic, in other words, it can change, okay? And that piece of paper is on the table, and it's reviewed every 3 months or 6 months, and it's not used in the wrong sense, but it's used in the right sense. It can be a very, very useful tool. It can also be a great protection for the employee. Like, maybe I'm a guy, or I'm a leader, and I want things to be going forward, and I'm, like, with my staff, I'm always, I'm not looking to, but just the demands that really is on the church as going into all the world in the gospel, that trickles down, and I'm aware of things going on. There's more things that I'd like to be able to do, but I cannot do. So if I can find, like, soft spots with the people that work with me, soft spots in the sense like an hour here or an hour there where someone is free, and I can put, a piece of work to fill up that time slot, I'm going to do that, But sometimes I can overdo it. And so if a person has a job description, he pulls out and says, no, wait a minute, not in the bad sense, these are the things I'm doing. If I'm going to do this, it might start impacting some of these other things. I'm with you, Pastor Taggart. I'm with you, Pastor. I'm with you, leader. I'm for what you're doing. I'm with the vision. I'm just afraid if I say yes to this, some of these other things might be impacted. I'm not sure. If we're taking the risk together, then okay, let's put that on my desk. We'll see how it goes. But if a week from today you start seeing this thing up here slipping, don't get mad at me. Know that maybe there's a reason why that's happening. And again, sometimes there's this thing called, maybe some of you heard of it, called managing your boss, And we want to be careful how you use that, but I think it can be a very valid way of thinking. And I've got, my daughters are young. They're 20 and 19 and 15 right now, but they both have birthdays coming up soon, and they're, like, getting going in the workforce, in the workplace, and things will happen to them on the job. And geez, what do I do about this, Dad? It's like, go talk to your boss. Go talk to your boss. And your boss is a big girl, okay? She wouldn't be in business if she couldn't take straight up communicate. Now sometimes that's not true. There's people who are threatened by it, so it doesn't always work. But also, if you got a boss that you can't talk to, and again, I'd say it's probably time to find another boss, you know what I mean? Hopefully get yourself in a place where you don't, life isn't like depending on this job, although sometimes it goes the other way. But anyway, this is what I'm saying. These can be very, very, very useful. And even if, like, the company doesn't assign you a job description, you might want to write a job description. These are the tasks or the job that I've been given to do. You might want to keep track of that for your own sanity. Put it in front of your boss, once every 3 months. This is what I think I'm working on. Am I missing anything? My own boss, I'll just say this, Pastor Land, she's got a lot going on. He doesn't, like, highly manage me, I'm not saying that's good or bad. It's what it is. And probably once every 6 months, I'm probably gone through a very busy time and maybe going to, get fatigued and go into a minor depression. I want to sit down with my boss and have me, I just want to get comforted, what I'm saying? So I've done this a few times over the years where it's like, Pastor Lange, I'd like a review. So, okay, he sits down with me. What do you want to talk about, Pastor Taggart? I don't know. What do you want to talk about? Well, not really. Things are going okay. Okay, thanks for the review. That's about how that goes, So I again, that's just his temperament and nature and partly mine also. So I've learned in that case, it's good to write lists just so you know, sir, this is what I'm working on. And when you do it that way, instead of presenting your boss with a problem, you're presenting him with an answer. You're taking work off his desk by self-reviewing and handing it to him. So it all depends who you're working with. It depends on the nature of your boss. It depends on the nature of the person that you're supervising. Some people may need that to keep on track. Some people may need that for insecurity, to keep them out of trouble, to keep them from taking other things on. And we've got people like that work in Greater Grace World Outreach, some paid, some volunteer, and say, no, this is really what we have you doing, and it's probably better that you wouldn't get involved with this. Even though, thank God for your heart, but I'm afraid if you start doing this, we're going to lose this, and this is really what I got to have you doing. So that's maybe just a few thoughts about what is my job and what is, and the uses of a job description in terms of knowing what my job is or knowing what my supervisee, what their job is. Okay, so that's question number one. But again, you will be surprised, companies falling down across the country, around the world, because people do not know what their jobs really are. Okay, and these I would not say, are these in any particular order? Maybe not. Maybe these are in particular order. Now, had such a wonderful experience with question number one. Okay, what is thing number two that every employee ought to know? What is my job? What might be the second thing that I really got to know to do this, what I'm supposed to do? My compensation? That is not even on my list. I hadn't even thought, it hadn't even occurred to me. Okay, but for an employee, let me think about that, if I'm going to add that to the course or not. Okay? Compensation. We're a church, so we don't care about that stuff. But I know what you're saying. Okay, so what's my compensation? All right, but I'm not going to add that to my list of 7, but I'll think about that for future years. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
What is the order of the table organization?
Oh, there you go. Stop it right there. Who is my boss? Perfect. Okay, that is question number 2 on my list. Okay? Who is my boss? And I don't have a lot of commentary on that, but I would say that I could put it this way, maybe a number of different ways, but I could put it this way. Pitfalls might be, like I've got my boss here, and I've got maybe a confidant, a person who works alongside me that I confide in, that person confides in me. Maybe this person has worked for the company for longer than I have and knows things better than I do. And this person starts to give me advice about how I might want to work certain things. That can be very, very helpful, depending on the situation you're in. I mean, thank God for those people. But I would say, you got to be very careful in that situation that you don't start taking direction from a person who's not your boss that is in conflict with the person who is your boss. And I know sometimes there can be political situations, but when in doubt, I mean, if I can't take, I've got, I don't know who I got working alongside me. I got Chad working alongside me, which I don't. But maybe I'm in the music ministry and Chad starts offering me helpful, hints about how I can do something. If I can't objectively take what he says to me and go to Pastor Arto with it, or whoever my boss is, like Chad was suggesting this, what do you think of that? If that type of communication causes some sort of friction or insecurity, that's a great test about this relationship. Okay, so who is my, and then the other thing that can happen is, and maybe this will happen in the church sometimes, where you've got, your boss here, but then you've got people up above, like the pastor of the church, for example, that you have a relationship with, and sometimes you've got pastors, and maybe Pastor Ben, Pastor Javid will understand this, and we could maybe talk about this again later in the course, maybe not, but you've got some pastors who in varying degrees, they will do what I call administration from the pulpit. You know what I'm saying? So you've got the guys in the middle of a message, and then he'll stop and he'll say, no, wait a minute. What might be an example? Ushers, I want that door locked from now on. That might be like an extreme example. Pastor Stevens had it in him to do that stuff, and it was awesome, But so here I am. Let's just take it down the line. Just Pastor Schaller, Pastor Lange, Pastor Jason, Pastor Bruce May is really the head of the ushers. So Pastor Schaller gives this thing from the pulpit, and I'm way down here. I'm an usher down here in the organization, and it's like, okay, do I go over and lock that door? Like, what do I do now? That's what administration from the pulpit can produce. That's kind of uncertainty down in the organization. And in my opinion, when they hear that, all those people in the middle just got to make sure what they heard, and get that whole chain of organization on the same page with the pastor. Like, pastor, if it's crystal clear, maybe you're just going to do it. I heard it from pastor. I'm gonna do it. But you can have a situation. Maybe I'll go to a different page here if I can. Whoops, wrong pen. Okay, there we go. There we are. Okay, so anyway, here's the person up here, sort of administrating, from some public place or something. I could do it in a meeting. In the finance office meeting. Sometimes I'll get like excited about something, and to prove a point, I'll say something a little bit like extreme or radical. I do that once in a while, right? And then people there, sometimes they just, people have worked with me. They got to know how to take it. Well, Pastor Taggart, were you saying this? Oh no, I just didn't sleep well last night. People can understand that. So you've got that person at the top, and you got the middle manager, then you got like the foot soldier down here, and it's like when this guy right here is saying to his boss, I heard this from the guy above you, and this is what I'm doing. It's like that needs to be straightened out one way or another right away, okay? And either the guy in the middle, maybe he hasn't heard it, he's got to go right to his boss. My employee heard this. Is this what you meant? Did you want me? Is that just an absolute mandate? Can I work with this? Have you thought about this or that? And that give and take, even though it's a little bit uncomfortable, because nobody wants to question especially something said from the pulpit. Who wants to question that? It's like, with fear and trembling. But it's like that type of communication in a healthy organization has to be able to take place without anybody thinking they're going to lose their job or they're off or anything like that. It's just, in a sense, there's been communication from up here, deep down into the depths of the organization, which in a sense normally will come down through the chain of command. But of course, as we've talked about, in an emergency, right? The emergency can be an exception, So there can be exceptions to this. So let me go back to the previous thing here. Oh. So who is my boss? So that would be the two pitfalls that I would comment on about who is my boss. Number one, someone from the side giving me advice that I start taking as definition and maybe unwisely acting on without really hearing from my boss. And then number two, when you get people far above you talking about things. And then maybe a third one would be, go ahead, Sean. Oh, I'm sorry, where's the microphone? I got it right here. Absolutely. Go ahead, sir.
In the context of a church, because you do have a blend of employees
and volunteers, right? Not necessarily that's a scenario in a secular organization where you just have employees. But in the context of the church, when you have volunteers and employees, doesn't that kind of make it messy in terms of going to your boss? Or because if you're, okay, let's just say you're a volunteer, and if you, like you said, like the example between you and Pastor Lange, like you were frustrated, you just needed some downtime with your boss, so you went and you just aired things out. If you're a volunteer, does the mentality of your team, your department head, does that change because you're not necessarily on staff? Or do you have like well, this is a dumb question, but you kind of get what I'm trying to say. It's like,
Yeah.
how do you discern when that happens, when you have a volunteer and you have an employee, and when you have to do
Yeah,
this?
and that's the reason why I kind of wanted to stay away from Pastor Javid's question about compensation, because this is, I always communicate from this huge organization here with 100 employees, but most of you are never going to be in that situation, although by all means, if that happens to you, go, if you get a big church and have all this stuff going on, go for it. So I'm trying to teach the principles in a way that apply either way. But I would say, just as you were asking the question, I had a few immediate thoughts. I would say in our youth ministry, we have a combination of volunteers and a handful of paid employees. In music ministry, it's really Pastor Archo's on staff. I think everybody else is a volunteer. Security, we got I think like a healthy mix of guys who get paid and volunteers. And just as I think about the examples that I've worked with, I have not run into the type of things that you were asking me if they occur. I haven't seen that. I've seen people pretty much act the same for the most part. I would say with me, if I'm dealing with a volunteer, I'm probably going to they get a little more room and space. What I'm saying? They get a little more leeway, where someone that we're paying, we're going to be a little bit, have more expectations on that person in terms of, what we want them to do as opposed to what the volunteer wants to do. And if it's helping us, whatever you want to do is great. You know what I'm saying? By all means, if it's the employee, we kind of need you to do this. But then in terms of, something about time if the person wants to come and talk to you, some point you were making there?
Yeah, I just said like if the volunteer had a question about the department,
Yeah.
does he have the same, like just like the employee, can he go to the department head and
I think absolutely. Absolutely.
and it'll have the same amount of weight as it would have coming from an employee?
It could. I think it depends on the person. No, it depends on the person who's bringing the information. Some people just have some people have more credibility than others because of a track record of things that make sense. So you might have a situation, and where a volunteer would come and say things that are like very, very important to me. So it just depends. That's how it's been with me. So I'm just speaking from experience there. Okay? So that's number 2. Who is my boss? Now, the following ones after this maybe aren't quite as off the top of your head obvious, but the third one would be what policies or procedures govern or apply to my activity, govern my activity here. So yeah, I've got a job. Taya works in the finance office. She really can't do her job her way. You know what I'm saying? Especially the job that she does. She kind of does it our way, And in every job that you have, there's going to be, just varying degrees of what's on you and what's defined for you. But that's very important. Okay, so this is my job. Is there anything I need to know before I go out and get myself in trouble? Okay, I've been hired to drive the bus, for the Greater Grace Christian Academy. Anything I need to know? Well, as a matter of fact, there is. Before you take the bus out, you're going to do a circle check around the vehicle. You're going to check these 18 different things. Every mirror, every tire. Is there oil in the tank? You're going to check all the. Just there's things that you must do, and if you do not do that, at least don't learn to do it quick, we're going to find somebody else to do this thing. So there's policies and procedures. What are they? Please don't give me a job, let me run into a wall, and then get mad at me for running into a wall that you didn't tell me was there. Now, of course, that's always some of that's going to happen. When you go to work here, we can't tell you everything about Greater Grace World Outreach. In my office, the example is you're going to get someone coming from another department asking for something, and you're not going to know if you're supposed to give that to that person or not. Like, who is this person? Well, I can try and find an example I haven't used before. It's Pastor Love's secretary. He's asking for it. Well, of course, does that mean Pastor Love wants it, or is the secretary just on her own here? And it can put us in a difficult situation. So anyway, policies and procedures. What are they? What's governing my activity? Okay? And then the kind of the mirror image of this, what judgment calls are mine to make. Okay? What judgment calls are mine to make? And, I could think of all sorts of examples, but there's certain things, some jobs more than others, but certain things with the job that you're doing that is just your judgment call. And just an example that comes to mind, because we bump into it all the time, there's all sorts of people that want to be putting things into the church's bookstore to sell it. People want to make money, people want to support their missionary endeavor, people want to support their family, whatever they're trying to do. And so these things come to me all the time, not all the time, but probably once every month or two, something hits my desk, and I want to sell this. I have an idea to sell this in the bookstore. What do you think? People go to Pastor Schaller. I want to put this in the bookstore to raise money so I can go on the mission field. All that type of stuff. And you know what, guys? That is Janet Tangy's judgment call. She is the department head of the bookstore. She is the one who's responsible to us to have a budget. We can't be putting stuff in that store that we can't sell. She can't be buying stuff that sits there and we end up throwing out. She knows her clientele. She has a sense. That is why we have hired her to make those judgment calls. You've got some craft or some rings or beads you make. She's going to buy them from you and she's going to sell them. She's going to buy them from you for whatever you and her agree on, and she's going to sell them whatever she wants to. None of your business. That's just how we conduct business in the bookstore. And so there are judgment calls that are yours to make. Of course, those judgment calls are always subject to review. If you make a series of bad judgment calls, that right, or whatever you want to call it, responsibility to make those judgment calls, can be taken away from you. So it doesn't mean it's there forever, but there's certain things that are yours. And when in doubt, all the time, Pastor Lange, well, I don't have that many judgment calls I have to make, but Pastor Lange, this is my judgment call, but I'm not sure about it. What do you think? That's why you got a covering, okay? You are not meant to bear a burden that you cannot bear by yourself. So yeah, it's my job to make this judgment call. You go to your boss, this looks like a big one, and sometimes he'll say back to you, it's your call, make it, whatever you do, we're going to back you up, And if he can't say that, he shouldn't be letting you make the judgment call, Geez, let's talk about this. Maybe I would advise going in this direction, I would advise this, but whatever you do, I'll back you up. You might get all sorts of answers like this. So every job, there are judgment calls that you would make, that, decisions. Okay, so that's number 4. Okay, now I'm going to go down a couple pages here, get past that. Brilliant. There we go. Okay. Number 5. Okay. Who is under my supervision? Okay? This is the mirror image of who is my boss, right? Who's above me? Well, who's below me? Do the people below me know who their boss is? Do they have multiple bosses? How's that working? And everything I said about, like from the from like the who is my boss point of view, now that turns around in reverse for who is under my supervision, okay? They need to know who that is, and probably 2 or 3 times a year, 2 or 3 times in my career here, but sometimes, just because there's we have, how we talked a few lectures ago about like free and open communication. Talk to anybody you want to talk to about anything, except for this. Within these guidelines, have at it. I'm very happy if, Debbie Westera is talking to Dan Dunbar. I'm like, they're 2 awesome employees. I assume it's edification, and if they're sitting in the cafe talking about something, I'm going to believe the best. I don't need to get involved with that. Why would I? So, but once in a while, I do have to step in. I'm sorry it's going to sound this way, and maybe it shouldn't, but maybe it's good for you to hear it because sometimes it's necessary. Once in a while, I'll have to step in. I'll have to say, no, wait a minute now. I'm this person's supervisor. I want to be involved with this decision. I don't want other people. I don't care who you talk to, but don't talk to this person and then make a decision like that's definition. I got to be involved with that. I met with someone in my office today. Said, "Geez, you were meeting with so and so. What was that meeting all about?" And the person said, "Yeah, Pastor Taggart, I kind of wish you had at least known about that meeting or something." Well, okay, I got to put my boots on and walk over to someone's office and just have a conversation like, well, I would like to at least be invited or at least be informed as to what's going on in this meeting. I trust everybody, but when I got people working for me that are getting definition from other areas, it's like I'm like guarding these people because they're under a lot of demands from me to do this job a certain way, and now if other people are putting work on their desk, I need to know about it. And again, it depends on the nature of the work, and I can be like, I don't think I'm extreme, but sometimes I can appear extreme in certain situations where like maybe someone will come to the finance office and say, "Can you guys do this?" And it's be like, not that we can't do it, it's that we don't do it. And I'm afraid of the ramifications of doing it in this case. Does this become an ongoing thing now? I'm a little bit like weird like that, or like other people do better with those exceptions, and they can do one-offs. It's a one-time shot, no problem. I'll just get it off my desk. That bothers me maybe more than would bother other people. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but there's things behind it, So who is under my supervision is number 5. And number 6, I think I've spoken about this in passing a few times, but get this one right now, because this is what are my, and I'm sorry to use this word, my interfaces. Maybe there's a better word there, but that's what we're going with tonight. What are my interfaces with other team members or departments? And these interfaces are in a sense, they're any specific one in and of itself is easy, okay? It's like that specific problem is easily solvable. But when you multiply the number of interactions that you're going to have, and of course different departments are different, but when you think about the totality of interactions, like we talked about security, okay? And I keep on using this just because it's a good example, I think. Well, those guys in the security department, they got to deal with us. You know what I'm saying? And the us is very difficult because there's an administrative side to it and there's a pastoral side to it. On any given day, security can get in trouble for being too easy. How could you let this happen? Or too hard. How could you treat a person this way? They're not coming back to church now. And that's what they got to walk through every way. So they got to deal with us. They got to deal with staff. A number of departments that have expectations on them in terms of locking and unlocking doors and then that type of stuff. And then varying departments that are asking for levels of security, especially those who work with children. Geez, I'm uncovered here. How come there's not an officer here? Okay, look, man, we got one person covering the whole property. We can't do it. That type of stuff. Like, what are those expectations? So you've got departments you're working with who on any given day can come up to Wesley and ask him to do something. And then he's got to say, is this policy or is this an exception that I can make in this situation? And then if he says no, he's got to deal with the fallout from that. Like, do you know who I am? Do you realize I have pastor in front of my name? How can you possibly say no to that? And it's just like we got to, the point I'm making is this vast number of interactions that can happen require an endless amount of management that can be applied to it. These things need to be worked on day in and day out. And in a sense, this is what Peter Taggart does on his job. This is like almost all I, not almost all I do, but it's just, that's why we have team meetings, because violence is done to my team on an ongoing basis throughout the course of a week because they bump into these situations that need definition, so we meet and define them. And you have to love this stuff, or else you do not have the gift of administration. Okay? Nothing wrong with not having that gift, but again, find someone who has that gift and let them exercise it. Hey, we're going to do this. Great. Have you thought about this, and this? I haven't. Can you think about that for me? Yes, I can. Okay, get back to me next week with how you're going to solve A, B, C, and D, and we'll look at it, and I'll say yes, no, or maybe, and we'll talk about it. These are the people that are very, very important in the church, which is why this course exists. So what's my interfaces? So security has to deal with those above them, the staff around them. They've got to deal with minors. At any given time. Today, we had probably about 230 or 40 minors on campus between Greater Grace Christian Academy and the Learning Center. And at any given time, especially around 3:15 p.m., those individuals can cause challenges. And then they also have to deal with the body, okay? The body, who has not taken Pastor Taggart's course, has no idea how hard the job of security is, and all they know is when they show up, they got to get their kids to school on time, and they're rushing, and do you realize I got to drop my kid off and get to work? How on earth can you tell me to slow down and make a big deal out of it on this property? So that's how it goes. And every other department, and Richard, you work in youth, so you've got that same thing going on, right? You have a children's program you run, sports club or something?
I do the
Junior church here, yeah. Okay, so that's this stuff, all this stuff is swirling through. Maybe not swirling, but you're dealing with all this stuff every day. You gotta make parents happy. They don't want to know why their kid got injured. They want to know why their kid is doesn't have friends, and it's like your fault. I came to pick him up, and you guys kept me waiting. All this type of stuff, and then he's got to deal with. There's an interface with housekeeping, with security, sometimes with IT. I think, and that's with this check-in and check-out thing going. So this is just all these parts work together. What are my interfaces with other team members? As much as that can be defined, I'm going to be in a place of security and happiness in my department because I know who I am, I know what I'm supposed to be doing, and I know what I'm doing it. Okay, so that's number 6. And number 7, which is the B part of what Lisa was saying, but I'm going to put it in words that maybe you haven't thought about before. She was talking about the table of organization. I want you to think about it this way. What is my recourse? Okay? And recourse, those of you who don't know the word recourse, is if things are not working out for me, who do I talk to? I guess that's a real gut level way of saying it. And if my boss and I are at odds, like things we've come to an impasse that we are unable to work out for whatever reason, like I'm mad at him and he doesn't think I should be, or he's mad at me and I don't think he should be, and we cannot work this out, where do I go? Okay, who do I talk to? And it's really the table of organization. I go to my boss's boss. Is really, or sometimes I guess there's a personnel office also in this church. I go to my boss's boss, and but we need to know who that is. And not just who the person is, but in addition to who the person is, when I go to that person, what is my expectation? What is his job when I come to him with a complaint? Because if I go to him with a complaint and he says, I'm backing up so-and-so, I'm not talking to you, that's not recourse. I mean, that's a brick wall you're running into, you know? So there needs to be some sort of, and we talk about this, that, sorry, my handwriting's kind of falling apart here. But there just needs to be, and I got to be careful with this, and this is really governed, you know, Pastor Schauder's message of the last week or 10 days about wisdom from above and wisdom from below. We got to live by that. But there needs, if there is not fairness in an organization, okay, if there's not fairness, the people working with you, for you, under you, whatever that is, they're going to be unhappy, and rightly so. It will bother them, and it will maybe it will hinder them if they see injustice towards other people or towards themselves. It will hinder them. And in any given situation, you might have a point in time where there's something unjust, or, you know, anything I don't agree with. I think it should have happened that way. That's not what I'm talking about. But I'm just talking about a pattern or a way of life where this person gets away with this. Why is this? Why does that person get away with this and this person doesn't? How come that person is allowed to speed through the parking lot and I'm getting jumped on for speeding in the parking lot? Why is that? How come that person's kids are allowed to run wild, but you're being hard on me about my own kids? How come this person gets to come into work at 10 o'clock whenever he feels like it, but you're talking to me when I come at 8:45? Why is that? If that's going on a long term, it's no good. I mean, I'm sorry, it's a brilliant college level, senior level course. It's no good, okay? It's not, so that's, what is my recourse? I really want us, don't just dismiss that, because I think it's something that in a church can be overlooked. And this is the way I think about it. I think I've made this statement before this semester, but I've got, Angina working for me, or she isn't, but she's in my, under my supervision at some level. And she is having a problem in the job that she has. My statement is that my last resort is that she has a spiritual problem that she has to go to God with. That is the final place I go to. I'm going to try and fix that every way I can before I get there. Not that that can't exist and it can't happen, but I want to make sure I'm doing everything I possibly can as a person whose job it is to create an environment that she can prosper in, so that things can work, because I'm believing the best about it. I don't believe she has a spiritual problem with God. I think she's walking in the Spirit and things are awesome, So everybody understand that? So we'll get this into another, and we'll get to this in another part of the course. I'm a little bit tired, so the words I got to work on enunciation tonight. But, I would say, like, if I were an affiliate pastor somewhere, I might make a statement like this to my congregation. If you're hearing something from me that you don't hear from Pastor Schauder when you tune into Grace Hour, I want you to bring it to my attention and to his attention, because I want to hold myself accountable, because I am, those guys sign my ordination paper. I'm here to pass on what I've learned from these men. I want you to hold that level of accountability. And it's the same thing, in the finance office. Tootie, if you're having problems with Pastor Taggart, okay, talk to Yulia, talk to me, but if we can't work it out, I've got a boss, Pastor Lange. And I'd say in the course of my career here, under the current job I'm doing, I've had it for 7 years this spring. I think in two different situations, I won't name the individual, but two different people I've worked for have gone to my boss and said, I'm having problems with, oh, it might have been 3. Numbers are going up. Okay, maybe more than that, but 3 come to mind. And, 2 came immediately, a 3rd popped into my mind. And this happens, and it's uncomfortable, and it's healthy, and it's from God, and iron sharpens iron. And I do not trust myself, and I thank God that people have someone to go to hold me accountable and to ask those tough questions. When they've exhausted coming to me and I have not heard them, thank God they have somebody to go to. Okay? So we know what is going to be on the final exam. What are the 7 things every employee needs to know? But if you just list the 7, you'll get a lot of credit for that, but I'm looking for you to fill it out a little bit. Let me know you've thought about this and you know what's behind it and why some of these things are important and how it all sort of fits together in the big puzzle of an organization. Okay? Absolutely. Let me there's the microphone.
Pastor Tiger, regarding this last one that you mentioned, when the person may perhaps go not to you directly, but indirectly go to maybe the leader. As a person who already gone through this, how does it make you feel? Is there a time when you get a grunge saying, why? They could have come to me, can solve it, or do you ever face with situations like that?
Yeah, I do. And it can make me feel 2 ways, depending on the situation. I would say, on the good side of it, I trust the people I'm working for. So if people in my department are going to my boss, I'm very happy about it because I trust these men. Only good can come from Pastor Schaller, talking to Karen Jansen. Only good can come from it. That's how I think about it. But in an organization, okay, that's answer number 1. Now here's answer number 2. I would say that we, and I'm not so much talking about Greater Grace World Outreach, I'm talking about organizations in general, and especially church organizations, because we love people and we don't want to hurt them. Sometimes it is difficult for us to have frank discussions with them about their job performance. Okay? So the person below me is going to the person above me, and I have a feeling of discomfort about that, and I need to be able to be secure enough to go to my boss this way. I know that so-and-so in my department is coming to you. I know they're unhappy. I'm concerned about how good a job I'm doing. I'm not totally comfortable in my job. And if you think it's best that I step aside or that we make some adjustments here, I'm totally available to that, And that's probably it's the hardest thing in the world to keep that attitude, because we as men have our identity wrapped up in what we're doing. At least in the Western world we do. Maybe other cultures it's different. But we are not who we are in Christ. We are who we are in what we're doing. I'm saying job, and then you bring that right into the church. So you got to keep yourself. And then sometimes, so I've got Chad, and he's the head of the, the bingo department in the church, okay? And and Pastor Javid works under Chad, and I don't want to have to tell Chad to find something else to do, because I know that sometimes, not only am I managing it, but I'm pastoring people also. And I know some personality types have it in them that if I ask them to step down, that they will walk out And for the rest of their life, their confession will be, I got fired by Pastor Taggart. And that will become a huge stumbling block for them with the potential of damaging the church. So I would say I've seen it done, and maybe I've done it myself sometimes, where you leave a person hanging in an uncomfortable position, hoping that they will make that decision themselves. Okay? Is that right? Is that wrong? These are decisions we make. You know, does this make sense? So that's the second thing. So the first thing, I totally trust the people above me. Second thing is, is it time to, put in my resignation and find something else to do? And then the third thing that can happen, which I would highly counsel against, same situation. Chad's not doing well as the bingo pastor, okay? And Pastor Javid's coming to me. If I, as the leader, start saying to to Pastor Javid, I know Chad's doing a lousy job. We're ministering to him, just hang in there. That type of communication, I think, should be few and far between. And I'm not going to say never in a certain situation. I'm just saying few and far between, because then all sorts of bad things are happening now. You have inside information from the pastor, which is like, I don't want anybody having inside information from the pastor. What is that? My wife has inside information because I'm married to her, and not about the church, but about our marriage. But how could I possibly say something to you about this man other than, he is my man for bingo, and he's staying right there. Work with him, or go work in another department. You have options. I might say that to you. If I'm going to back him up, and I know maybe in my head that his leadership style is not all that I want it to be, I could say to you, you know what? If you can't work in it, I'm happy with him. But if you're unhappy in that department, you are free. And consider this department. That would be the type of counsel that would be, I would think, be clear and honest and good communication. Does that make sense? Anybody have any comment on that? Because I know I'm kind of out on a limb here a little bit, but this is, yeah. Great. You want?
Everything you say would have been nice to have like a manual. Like honestly, it just sharpens and it goes right in the bone, because we meet with this kind of situations daily, Pastor Terry.
Yeah.
But if we have that rehearsed in our mind, leaders, and we're all on the same page, that just saves us from so many, different things. It would be nice just to have that, like all your class as a manual.
Yeah, and that's what this course is about. We talked about that a little bit the first day, but this really came from Pastor Schaller, that he knew we needed a course that would just train people in some of this practical stuff. I've thought about whether we should create a book out of this course, and I don't know if we should or we shouldn't. I'm also a little bit, some of this material I'm kind of like, I don't want to say I'm on my own, but I haven't run everything just because there's only 24 hours in a day. It's like I'm trusted with this course, and I think we're okay. I think we're covering good material here. But anyway, that's why this course exists. Maybe we can make it into a manual. Please, learn this stuff. And I also think that's why you're enjoying the course, is because this is where we live, day in and day out. This is where we stumble and fall, and you don't necessarily, you get the principles from the Bible, but you don't get the specifics. It's just not there so much. And some of the stuff we just got to sort of work out. Now, I would also say, maybe a fourth answer now about this specific situation. You come to me about, your supervisor here, Pastor Taggart. Chad was upset with the way I did something. He slapped me in the face. Okay, I would, in that situation, or he swore at me or did something. I would say, Pastor Javid, if that is true, okay, then we owe you an apology at least, and we'll take action about it. I've only have one side of the story, because I've heard from you. I got to get this other guy in a room and find out what happened there, and are there witnesses? But I might make that in a situation, You know, I'll do that sometimes with our outside customers. Once in a while, something that happened at GGCA or at the Learning Center, a parent will be mad, get to me. This is how I was treated, ma'am. If that happened, I apologize. It should not have happened that way. But sometimes they'll take. The person can take that and repeat it like I just, hung someone out to dry. I got to phrase it. I'm going to investigate this. But if that did happen the way you said it, I'm going to find out. Oh, it did happen that way. Okay, but understand, I got to hear both sides of the story to be fair. If you were on the other side, you'd want it that way, wouldn't you? Yes, I would. People usually understand that. So you can. That's answer number 4, I think, to the question you asked me. And in my life, I've had jobs that worked great for 3 years, and then the 4th year it stopped working. And I've done myself a disservice by letting my boss get to me before I got to my boss. In other words, instead of sitting down with her and say, it's obvious to me we need to make a change, let's have a reasonable period of time, and you start looking, and we'll just work this thing out, and we'll work apart friends. Instead, I waited too long until I was getting fired. Even though I knew it wasn't working, I was like, how can I get mad at my boss? I didn't have the guts to step out in faith because it was my job, and I didn't want to lose the income. That's the bottom line there, But that's, if we can get ourselves to these maturity levels, and see that really changes is like God promoting us. You have to look at it that way. You cannot look at it that I have failed in this job. You have to look at it like God has shown me I'm going to be doing something else, and get out ahead of it. And that's why you can find yourself like you're in a situation and you get this sick feeling in your stomach like this is not what it used to be. I mean, maybe this isn't right anymore. But then you get reactionary. Instead of viewing these things as God just telling you and nudging you, it's time to move on, you start fighting these things and blaming that person, all that type of stuff. And again, sometimes it's a storm that Satan has raised, and you've got to overcome it, and you'll get past it and go forward. And other times, God's just closing the door, and you're going to run out of doors, and you're going to find something else to do. So you got to hopefully be discerning and be hearing from God, and get out before he kicks you in the rear end, So that's how that goes. So at 7:16, we're going to come back here at, make it 7:23. Okay.